Yeah. So, welcome everyone. As many of you know, we had a change in chairmanship here because Josh Ling had left the WFP, and this was kindly taken over by Mathieu Dubreuil. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
As you all know, after the last call, what was decided is that a small group was gonna discuss or try to come up with a scope for the group and then present it here to be agreed by or discussed by the rest by the bigger group. I don't know. I think at this moment, I think it would be the best thing would be to that Mathieu takes over, and first, if you can introduce yourself and then take over the meeting, if it's all right with you.
Yeah, sure. Well, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. So I'm Mathieu Dubreuil. I'm Senior Insurance Advisor for the World Food Program. And I've been working on the R4 initiative since 7 years now. And I'm also working on the ARC replica, so more on the sovereign insurance level. And before I was working in for Planet Guarantee, who is now Inclusive Guarantee, and mostly in West Africa. So yeah, I guess we're not doing like a roundtable because it might be a little bit too difficult online, but we're having the list of participants. For anyone who would not be already in the list, I guess feel free to write it in the chat so that we can actually register your name. So basically, we try to discuss with the group a bit what we actually wanted to achieve in this working group on food security and climate change. And we thought that maybe the first thing that we had to do was to clarify a little bit the concepts. Maybe first of food security, because I suppose that everyone has maybe a little bit more better understanding, let's say, on food security, on climate change. So trying to gather that, I guess it's in the concept note, but just to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Food security, as defined by the United Nations on world food security, means that all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. And so it has four main dimensions, which are food availability, food access, food stability, and food utilization. But when we come to climate change and how climate change actually affects food security and nutrition, we see that it does affect it in four main ways. First, it affects food production because it affects the production itself, and like some of the staple crops actually are being less productive in drier climates, for instance. And so with future climate prediction, we see that some areas are actually being threatened, and like crop losses will be increasing in the future for many areas. Also, like the changes in rainfall pattern will definitely affect crop quality and crop quantity, which will have an impact on production, and as well higher temperatures. But it also had like three other aspects, which are food access, price increase, mostly because of rarefaction of production, and so most vulnerable people will actually have like more issues to access food and to have like a nutrition meal, food utilization itself, and nutrition. So when we discussed with the team, we actually agreed that it was a very, very wide topic if we wanted to cover it all. And so we agreed that we should first narrow it down to production only, as most of the microinsurance agricultural products or natural catastrophes products are rather focused on the production aspects of food security and climate change. This does not mean that we will not cover the other topic in the second time, but at first we want to, to have like a smaller topic and to make sure that we do produce something. So before going a little bit more in detail on like how we would like, the type of question we would like to discuss with the group and how we would suggest to move forward, has anyone any question or remark or suggestions on that?
Yeah, this is Kate McKee. Nice to see you again, Mathieu. Can you hear me all right? Yeah.
Yeah, perfectly.
I agree with the focus very much. I do think that it would be helpful in the upfront framing and in how we talk about the issue to acknowledge the income aspect more, including for urban areas and households, low-income households, that food security is not a largely rural phenomenon, and that even for rural low-income households, that the income shock may come through their other livelihood activities and affect their ability to access sufficient food.
Yeah, totally. So, well, I guess the floor is open to discussion. We really tried to narrow it down to make sure that we would focus on that, because my feeling is that if we also include income, including in urban areas, we may diverge a lot from the questions that we wanted to discuss with you, at least in the first time. But I totally agree that it's a very important aspect, and maybe also
and let me be clear. I meant it really mainly for the framing, so that as we're setting up the topic, and then I think it's clearer as well why we're focusing on a narrower set of questions that are certainly plenty urgent and important.
Yeah, that's well noted. Thanks.
Yeah, hi Matthew, this is Shilpi here.
Hi.
I'm just wondering, just a suggestion or a thought here, whether we should look at the challenge from the lens of COVID, because we've been reading that a lot of domestic and international supply chains have been impacted. I have a feeling that this will also impact the agricultural output, and the effect on the livelihoods of the population will be very severe because of the COVID. So would you want to incorporate that?
Yes, I suppose that would be very, very interesting. Apologies for the ambulance. That's the sound of Rome. Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely the impact on production. From our perspective at the World Food Program, we're already seeing some impacts in the field. So I suppose it would be very interesting. And actually, like in some of the questions that we wanted to present after, I think this could be included, definitely.
Thank you.
Any other comment?
Mathieu, I just want to let everyone know you can also use the chat function, and you can also raise your hand while Mathieu is talking, so he also realizes that someone wants to raise a point. So please use the functions.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hi Matthew, Shilpi here again. I have one more question.
Yeah.
Are we will there be a focus on geography, or are we looking at a very high level, from the global perspective? What's your thought on
that? Honestly, we did not discuss that. I think it would be good to have a high level first, I think. So what we'd like to do is to have maybe a very brief document, like a brief guidance note at the very beginning, and then go into maybe a little bit more technicalities of the topic, because there is definitely a lot of things to discuss. And if we want to produce something and have something very concrete out of this working group, we thought that, you know, if we go straight into like too many countries, too many types of risks, and so on, we may actually get nothing out of that. But I mean, yeah, we're open after taking some specific countries where we would collect a little bit more information after. So maybe I could go through the different questions that we're thinking of, and explain a little bit more what we had in mind, so that, you know, we can discuss it a little bit more in details. So the idea was that we would like to divide the working group into two subgroups, one that would be probably a little bit more operational and one that would be a little bit more technical. And each of the subgroup would focus in discussing one or two issues within the list of questions that we're having, and then regather after a certain time to actually come up with this guidance note. So on the more operational subgroup, we have like two main questions. The first one is the list of risk management measures that could be taken by farmers to reduce their risk exposure. How this could have an impact in the mean to long term in terms of pricing, so that we actually manage to reduce the cost for farmers and improve the quality of the product. Because when we look at most of the microinsurance products in the field, usually we have like a relatively high frequency of payouts, because we need to have the indices visible and, you know, working, and we need to build confidence in the market. But in reality, insurance should really be for more infrequent shocks. So how can we find, you know, the right balance to have like a good product for the farmers, and at the same time a product that farmers see and can use for that? So there is some trade-off here, and definitely risk management measures could be useful regarding this. But if we have like a too high frequency of payouts, we tend to create some basis risk. And so we need to link the insurance product with other risk management measures. What kind of measures, and what kind of impact on the overall system and on the price this could have. So that was the first question. The second one was more building a guidance note on elements to take into account when designing microinsurance products related to food production, so pre-agricultural insurance products. How insurance could help improving access to finance, adoption of risk reduction measures, adoption of crops more adapted to climate change. For instance, drought-tolerant crops in some regions, definitely. For instance, maize would not be I'm thinking about Southern Africa, for instance. Maize may not be the best crops to target. How could insurance give more confidence to farmers in investing a little bit more and producing more and increasing their income and their food security? So I see that there is a comment here. Who has raised the hand? I cannot see, actually.
So this is Pranav Prasad, Matthew.
Hi.
Hi. So great. Sorry, I got in about 4 minutes late, so I missed your initial thing. But now that we are discussing the actual documents that are created, I just wanted to backtrack a little, because the way I read the note that came along with it, it seems to have three distinct things. Of course, they are interrelated: climate change, food security, and microinsurance. And now that we are discussing it, you're moving into operational and the other side, so breaking it into two of them. I was just wondering that is there a kind of mix and match, that operations for all three aspects, operations for just the insurance aspect and how it can impact food security and reaction to climate change, or what? I mean, what I'm not being able to get clear in my mind, at least, is that will we be focusing on all three of them or one of them? Because I heard you saying protection is what we are focusing on. So if you could just kind of summarize it for me, at least, it'll be useful so that then I can understand how the operational thing will flow or can flow, and then have some concrete suggestions.
Yeah, and I mean, no, I think it's a very good question. I would probably be tempted to say mostly insurance, but with the entry points of food security and climate change. So it's definitely narrowing down the types of products, the geographical scopes, types of farmers as well. And maybe this is something that we need to discuss, because we're having, on one side, very vulnerable farmers who need like some specific type of coverage, and some more advanced farmers who are still smaller farmers and do need microinsurance covers, who need maybe more sophisticated products. So that would be probably my my thinking about that, because the actual aspect of climate change and food security are more impacts and drivers of what we will do on insurance than if we were like considering the three exactly at the same level. But happy to discuss that. Does it make sense?
No, it certainly did. I'm just looking forward. I mean, I'm just looking how we can kind of integrate them into one, and then have the specific documentation, etc., that you're proposing. Because I mean, the note is great, and like I said, I see three distinct issues there. So I was just looking at how to integrate them. Yes, you mentioned it correctly, that insurance point of view, but focused on these two aspects. So I guess as you discuss it, perhaps it'll emerge, it'll become clearer. Let me not block it. Carry on, please. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe let me go to the technical subgroup and the technical questions. And maybe in the end we just like want to focus on one question, because it's actually too much to deal with. We're not sure also on who would be on the call, because for instance, we do need to have actuaries and reinsurers participating to this conversation, especially on the technical questions, because I suppose most of us would not be fully able to answer to that, and we would also probably need some academics. So on the technical subgroup, the question that we're having is that how can we set optimal data set to better understand climate patterns, to design risk management tools. So we were taking like one example regarding the length of data series. Like if we take West Africa.
New member introduction, Matthew.
So if you take West Africa, for instance, and the Sahel, you have like the 80s and the 90s were way drier than since 2000. And so if we consider data sets since 1980, which has been most of the practice in most of the indices that I've seen, you're actually reducing the quality of the product and mechanically increasing the price for the farmers, which is not great. But at the same time, if you're taking a too short data set, then it's obviously pretty risky for the reinsurer, who will probably like increase the loading for that. So what would be the right balance on that aspect? And we thought that it would be actually very interesting to take that and to take into account the climate change / rainfall trends. Because when I'm taking the example of West Africa, there is definitely some impact of climate change, but just the cyclical rainfall trend is be taken into consideration. Some other regions in Africa and outside of Africa would be considered differently. And so how to factor the impact of climate change and rainfall trend in the risk profile definition and in the pricing to optimize the product offered to farmers. So that was the first question. The second one was the comparison of performance of various remote sensing, data and tools, and possibly the combination to improve performance of the index, to improve seasonal monitoring, and to improve the assessment of potential base risk situation. We see that most of the remote sensing data are currently being used for expanding indices, index insurance schemes, but at the same time, we see that we keep always facing base risk situations. So how the combination and the use of also like new technologies could actually help reducing these issues. And it's also, well, we thought it was also important to understand what's actually happening in the fields of the farmers at the end of the season, so that we can actually reassess the performance of the product. So that was the two other questions, which, as you can see, is still pretty broad, but we tried to narrow it down. So I would like to open the floor to see if there are some comments, some questions about the definition of the question themselves, if you think it is relevant yet. Yes, James.
Hi, Mathieu. I just had a question as to whether this is something that should be examined as well. Is, you know, we see a lot of products being developed, but they're not accepted by the farmers. So there's a demand, you know, issue as well. So if you can create a beautiful product and, you know, with great index triggers and very sophisticated, but if they're not welcomed by the farming community, then we won't be able to address the production. And so, you know, one aspect of it is what is it the farmers are looking for, and that affects the pricing, right? If you have a 1 in 25 year product, that may not be something the farmers want, you know, because it's, but at the same time, they may not be willing to pay for something that's more. On the other hand, if it's determined that working with the microfinance institutions that provide funding for the inputs would be favorably affected, either in terms of greater access or lower rates, then the farmers might be more interested. But that means, you know, figuring out what that relationship is between the microinsurance product and the microfinance institutions or agricultural banks that would make the loan. So anyway, I guess that's that demand component seems to be something that needs to be explored. Otherwise, there's not a market, you know, for it.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it could totally fit in the first group of questions, more operational, related to, you know, how it actually gives more confidence in investing, unlocks us access to finance. And definitely, I mean, when the products are bundled, there is like at least higher sales, maybe not exactly higher demand, but I strongly believe that when there is like a whole set of tools for the farmers and that they have like the right level of education, they see where insurance fits and where it does not. So I guess, yes, the demand would be very interesting. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Who was talking? Sorry.
That was Kate, but let me wait because I haven't raised my hand. So
okay. So
let me know.
Yeah.
That's okay. You can go ahead, Kate, please. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say I like the list of topics, and if we go to the back of the process and think about what is the deliverable, I do think there would be keen interest in a kind of a straightforward discussion of performance of how these products have been designed, and maybe a kind of a bit of a typology of them, which speaks more to the third bullet. I think the fifth bullet is probably an important aspect of that in terms of tools that inform the design. And I would agree that the demand side is something that there's keen interest in, because this narrative about the products are there, but they're not working when they actually get in the field is something that I think people want to understand. So I'm almost wondering if we're looking at an option between at least two different types of deliverables from these two streams that you proposed. One that would be quite kind of operational, based on what's going on in the field. We wouldn't want to be too selective geographically about that, because I think we'd want to draw on experience where we can find it. And then a second that is a kind of a framing and about approach to where these kind of interventions fit perhaps from both an actuarial and an insurer perspective. I'm not sure on that point, but I do see a lot of interest, I think, in a very straightforward description of what's the current state of play and what have we learned on the design, delivery, and demand response.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I think what we really wanted to, what we discussed actually during our meetings was, yes, there is some climate change, and it does have a very, very strong impact, at least in some regions, on the product design and on the performance of it. So we maybe jumped a little bit quickly, on the technicalities of the design, the structure, the pricing, and so how would we actually interact with reinsurers in particular, because they're the one who are actually driving that, and if they don't accept price of products on a 10-year basis instead of 30 years, well, then we won't have a product that farmers will like, because the product is not triggering in recent years, and so it won't create confidence and it won't create the demand. Yeah, I totally agree that demand should be maybe a bit more explicit in the concept note. Yes, Shilpi.
Yeah, I think just to continue that point on demand, my one suggestion would be, if we have the time and if we can do a double click on the gender aspect, right? Because most of the low-income farmers, and especially the small farmers, are by and large women. So if there is a gender lens to the demand in terms of product features and engagement models and the product performance, with just a double click on gender, that will be really very useful.
Matthew, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Now, I was saying, there are some more hands raised, but I cannot see whom, and I'm trying also to read the comments in the chat.
I see Emily's hand up.
Okay, Emily. Yeah.
Hi, Mathieu. Thanks for taking on the group. Hi, everyone. This is Emily from IFAD and PALM. I'm just a little bit lost, because we had two previous calls, I think, on the best practice group. in which we discussed some of the focus and the deliverables, and we also voted on them and discussed them. And I know you've taken over the group, but it would at least help for me. I don't know if it's possible in this call or as a reminder afterwards from notes or something, to understand how these topics were decided on and what happened to the previous discussions and things that we voted on, because a lot of the things like gender and demand and COVID were also mentioned in those calls. So I would just appreciate a bit more of a reminder or a background if possible.
Well, there, I don't know if Tuga or Asier want to explain, because I wasn't in those calls. But just like, I think, I mean, from my point of view, what I felt is that just the concept of food security, which is supposed to be like, you know, one of the key topics of this working group, was not very clear in the questions, and that's the reason why maybe took a step back. But what was really like discussed previously, maybe my colleagues can step in.
Yeah, this is Asier from the main. Thanks, Emily, for your comment. From the last call, the conclusion was that a small group would gather and try to look over and elaborate some sort of concept paper to suggest to the wider group as a way to go forward. And yeah, so I think that's what Mathieu was presenting. I don't know if Tuga, if you want to add something to that.
No, absolutely. I think we looked at those as a starting point. We looked at the key topics that came up, and they were quite broad. And we were really trying to say, you know, looking at food security and climate change, is there something, a value add that this group could direct its attention towards, and something that would be, and one of the things actually, so in the very first meeting we had around this, it was on the margins of the Inclusive Insurance Conference in Dakar. A small group of us, I think some might be on this call, we sat together and we said, you know, this topic could really take us in so many directions. And that's great. I mean, it's an interesting topic, but it would be important to pick an area of focus, have a deliverable, and then maybe change the focus after that, and move on and evolve. But if we opened up all the branches, we may find ourselves in quite a few of these discussions, but not really progressing. But we did definitely, we looked at the feedback from the groups, and then we had, the last thing Josh did was sort of a narrower paragraph based on those findings. And then we built this conversation in from that step.
Is it good, Emily?
Yes, sorry, I was trying not to interrupt, but yeah, thank you. Now that's clearer. So I should just focus on what has been sent because you have taken everything into account, and now this is the focus. Okay, thank you.
Pranav, I see that you've actually like left a pretty long message. Do you want to step in and so I can discuss it?
Well, sorry, I was just sharing my thoughts, and it was more for me to come up to speed with what is happening. I was really, since there have been earlier discussions that I haven't been a part of, so I was just incorporating aspects like having this comprehensive approach that we've discussed, and the importance of customer and client awareness, because without which we can have, as James mentioned, wonderful products. We can also have customers wanting something done, but till they understand how insurance will work for them, till they understand what is available, what steps they need to do to actually avail of those benefits, there remains a gap. And the so-called thing that we've talked about, that the need doesn't convert to demand. So I was just trying to highlight the importance of educating the customer along the way and understanding the issues from the customer side as well as from the supplier side, so that there is a actual offtake, and it translate all the work that insurers, reinsurers, actuaries do translates into actual benefits at the ground level. That's the only point that I was trying to make.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I just would like to challenge, in the framework of food security and climate change. I think, for instance, education would make sense if it's education about how insurance fits into adaptation measures, into mitigation measures, into yes, adapting the crops to climate change and to improving productivity and production so that the household is more food secure, but not like education specifically on the product, because that could be discussed in other groups.
Fair enough. I'm with you on that. I mean, definitely it needs to be focused on.
Yeah.
But like I said, the way I read the note, perhaps that's my limitation. The way I read the note, I did not find reference to creating awareness and education. So I just thought that it will be good to just put it on the table and see that it fits into the discussion somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. No, I guess, that, I mean, that's just the way we've seen it. But as Tuya was, stating it, we really wanted to get something out of this. And it's such a broad topic that ultimately we wanted to have like some very, very clear questions. And maybe they're actually like not yet clear enough. But there was on one side something that is very much about how insurance, fits into like broader risk management regarding climate change adaptation to improve food security, just to put it like that. And on the other one is more how climate change and climate trends do impact the product structure, the pricing, and the performance, and how can we optimize it and have maybe some guidance for product design and product pricing with all the experts and the reinsurers to make it even more clear. So, well, I don't know if there are any more questions or comments on these two. Maybe I'd be interested to see if if participants agree with these two main questions and two main subgroups, and if you could, I don't know, raise your hand, if you think that could make sense and we could achieve something from there. And if you don't raise it, means that maybe we need to rework it. Sorry, in 3 votes. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. So I'm not too sure to make like, maybe if there are some people who are already interested in one of the two subgroups, if you would like to volunteer to participate, I mean, either now after the call. We were thinking with the group actually that it would be interesting to also interview some institutions and some people who are outside of the microinsurance network. Well, for instance, I was thinking of IRI because I know that they've been working on the impact of climate change and like change of climate trends on the performance of the indices. That would be surely useful. Probably some reinsurers as well, and probably some others if you have that in mind. Okay, well that's well noted.
Mathieu, apologies if I'm jumping ahead on the process you have in mind here, but given that you're getting volunteers for the different groups, I wonder if a good next step might be asking each of them to frame more specifically what is the deliverable that they think would be most appropriate for their topic. And
yeah, totally.
And the MIN might already have a template in mind for that, or a set of questions they'd want answered about, main audience and process and support needed and so on.
I don't know. Esier, does the MIN have some template? I think we're pretty open here in what we want to achieve, right?
Yes, we don't have any particular template done or anything, but can, of course, it can be, it could be something that can be discussed to see how taking your paper as a reference, the concept paper that we sent, and then working on from there. But no, we don't have a particular template of exactly what we're going to go. I think that's something that we like normally the group to decide.
Yeah, and I suppose, at least at first, a relatively short paper, like 2 full pages, would be good, just to at least set the framework and like clarify a little bit on what we're working and what we're looking for. Because if we want to do like some really deep work, it might take a little bit more time, and we may lose a little bit some interest along the way. So I just feel from like the first feedback that there is maybe a little bit more appetite for the first subgroup. There's more operational, maybe because we also don't necessarily have the technical skills within the group to actually work on the second part. So I suppose that's also like very possible to just focus on the first part only. Yeah, agreed. It's actually so maybe I'm going to paste just the 2 subgroups and the notes that I had taken to actually make sure that everyone has a little bit more of the details in the chat. It's a bit longer than what you have in the concept note. Hi, Ian. Okay, so you would also be interested in the operational aspect.
Yes, we're obviously an insurtech company who's very much focused on technical solutions to the problems we're discussing here. So if you decide to focus on the operational side of things for the time being, that's also fine, and we'd also still like to be involved. But it's if there's a small group that sort of looks at technical aspects, I think we'd be quite interested to be on that side as well.
Matthew, you're muted, but we see your lips moving.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time. Sorry. I was asking if, James, you also had raised your hand or if it was from before.
No, that was from before, but yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, so I guess right now there is a little bit more sorry, I'm reading Sophie's message. Well, yeah, the target audience. I guess it was first for like microentrance network members, right? But obviously it should be a guidance for the industry as well.
Yes, the target audience would be like the main being a multi-stakeholder organization. We usually try to all our focus is basically on general on the everyone who is interested in developing the microinsurance sector, right? So it's actually not only for members or industry or anything. It's we have, if the paper can focus as well on everything that, including regulators, including industry, including anyone who would be interested in developing inclusive insurance.
Okay, so I suppose, unless like there are more questions and comments, but I suppose what we could do is, collect a little bit your feedbacks after this call and your interest in participating to one or the other, and maybe adjust a little bit some of the questions, and then plan like a smaller group meeting to actually move forward on the actual questions and the type of deliverable that we want to have before regathering with a larger audience. Would that make sense to everyone? So yes, I see you wanted to.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to mention that if you want, what we can do is kind of circulate the document, and everyone kind of puts their name on which group they would like to be or which group they would like to join, and then so it's like clearer who wants to be where.
Yeah, would be good. So I guess we can try to do that like for next week, because we're also thinking in terms of timeline, and if we could manage to have like some first short document by the end of the year, that would already be like quite an achievement, and have like 2021 with a bit more ambitious work. That would be great. So I suppose that, yeah, let's try to say that by the end of next week we collect all the feedbacks and all the people who would like to participate to one or the other, and then we start the work on each of the subgroups. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I don't know if well, Sarah is here, or Tugai, you want to add anything?
Nothing from me, thank you. That was great, and I like where we've come out at the end of this meeting.
Yeah, thanks so much. And good to see so much interest as well.
Yeah, hopefully we achieve something there. I remember the previous agricultural microinsurance working group of the CIGAP 10 years ago. way too many people.
Yes.
It was difficult to do something. So yeah, I hope we can do something. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. And yeah, so we'll be circulating the document. So by latest next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.